Have you always known what you wanted to do? How have you continued to grow throughout your career? I feel like I'm lost, feeling unfulfilled and unsure how to recharge my design batteries. I work as a designer, but the work I do isn't what I love. Should I just quit my job and become a yogi in Bali? It sounds like a joke, but it's what I'm really considering.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's like quite a few different little elements to that question, so I might try and break them down into like little themes, I suppose. So I guess firstly, feeling unfulfilled and lost. I think that's natural in the design industry. I feel like a lot of people, as creatives, it's not always clear what creative direction will go. There's so many different possibilities. So I think that that's a completely normal feeling, and I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about feeling like that, because it's, I've definitely been there myself plenty of times. I guess another point of that, that leads into that, I suppose, is have I always known, what I wanted to do? And we were just chatting about this like briefly ahead of this call, and I've always known I'm creative. I've always enjoyed being creative, but what that kind of looks like in a career path hasn't always been clear. I started out, leaving high school and selling mattresses of all things. So, that who would have known that now I'm doing what I'm doing from that kind of trajectory. And then from there, I navigated, plenty of different disciplines, from writing to art direction to photography, right through to design. And then within design, I kind of found my feet. And I think I found my feet because it's so broad. And I think that's what I like about the design industry, as opposed to when I was a photographer. I felt like, I could be working on a brand, or I could work on a fashion label, or I could be, coming up with a campaign. And there's so many different elements, which I think is good. I think that in terms of the growth element, or recharging your design batteries, I think that maybe becoming a yogi isn't such a bad thing. I feel like, there's a way that, I guess for context, my business partner, Cass McKenzie, so shout out to her because she's watching. At one point in her career, she was, a really successful agency. She had a folio that other designers would absolutely dream of. And she had a similar feeling, and she did actually quit her job, become a yogi, but not in Bali, and it was in Nepal. And, she went away, found herself or refound herself, and came back, and, her work's better for it. And, now she's got all these mindfulness techniques that she can integrate into her life, and, helps with, navigating the complexities of running your own business. Oh, and one more thing, actually, so sorry. One other kind of element to that as well, I think in the growth aspect, which kind of works in both question one and the last question, and this question about learning and growing and kind of keeping connected. I've always been a really big advocate for mentoring and kind of professional mentorships, whether they're formal mentorships, which, there's a lot of great organizations out there who offer that. I've, personally done some before with Womentor, and, that's specializing in upskilling women in the industry because of the lack of representation in leadership, as well as with the Design Business Council, who also kind of give you those more structural business skills. And, I've grown a lot from that, and we've taken on mentees at Storyfolk. So, yeah, there's lots of different elements.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
I think it's
a tangent.
No, I think it really does. It's also one of those things of like, each time you reach that point in your career, it feels like a massive decision. We did an event in Melbourne last night for internships, and one of the students I was talking to talked about how, this is such a big decision. I've got to decide like what my career is going to be and what do I really want to do. And I said, you know what, you're allowed to change your mind. And if something doesn't work out, you actually can just stop doing it and move on to something else. Sometimes it feels like a big thing, but actually flicking the switch and choosing to go down a different path for a bit is perfectly okay. And I think people are almost all the richer for it as well. Katie, anything you'd like to add to that question?
I really like what you've said there, because quite often I'll say to people, just bring the circumference in. Like if you are asking yourself the question, what should I do for the rest of my life? Very few people are going to get there confidently, right? But if I just bring that in closer and ask you something softer, like what do you need for the next 12 months? You can get there much more readily. And I think that to the person who asked this question, ask yourself what you need and what need is not being met at the moment. Because it might be that that need is answered by being a yogi in Bali. It might be that it isn't. And you're just taking that same longing to a different geographical location. So by knowing the truth of who you are and saying under the question, I think you said, I feel like I'm lost. Well, what's really happening there? What's really lost? What are you really longing for? What is unfulfilled? What do you need? What lights you up? Where in your life do you not feel like that? Because it might be that you don't have to reinvent the whole wheel. It might be that there's just an aspect of you that isn't being met, that can be met somewhere else. So, yeah, bring the circumference in, make it a 12-month question, and you'll probably get there a lot more readily.
Yeah, those are excellent answers. For